What do you do when heading on vacation? What did Harden do almost every game in 2018? What were you doing when going to your destination on the 2nd of July 2025? And what do 53% of you do daily? Travel! Having to go from place A to place B is found everywhere, including in video games. Now, raise your hand if your favorite part of playing video games is traveling from whatever you're currently doing to the next point of doing stuff. I think travel in video games is majorly overlooked and underdeveloped. When you actually crunch the numbers, a lot of games, especially open world ones, have a large portion of runtime made up by just traveling. So why is it always either really boring or a loading screen? I think there are 3 things that can be added to travel to make it the highlight of a game. Before I actually get into the main topic of the video, let me just quickly define what travel is. Travel is moving from place A to place B, keeping it real simple. Ooh, shiny! A person's brain is 63% lizard, so a great way to make travel interesting is just to add interesting stuff along the way. There's an infinite amount of things that could be interesting, so I'm gonna do my best to narrow it down into the 4 L's. Loot, lore, locals, and locale. Loot is pretty self-explanatory. Giving a player stuff that makes them stronger or drippier is almost always gonna make them feel good, not only because number go up, but also because it takes traveling from feeling like a chore and a waste of time to feeling like a part of the progression. Lore is a little more niche, but if you think about it, forced semi-engagement is a great place to show off your world building. A player traveling is essentially a captive audience with nothing better to do than to pay attention to that really cool and mysterious skeleton in the corner. I know I said locals, but that was just a way to keep up with the L theme. I really just mean NPCs. Everyone expects NPCs in towns, but I always really enjoy seeing NPCs just out and about. I think it makes the game and its world feel more alive. It also acts as a great way to add NPCs that only show up on occasion, instead of limiting them to showing up 2 hours of one day once a week. Graveyard Keeper. I'm not gonna lie to you, I was really scraping the bottom of the barrel with the word locale. What I mean by it isn't the beauty or brutality you can add to a world to spice up travel. I'm gonna cover that later. What I mean is adding in hidden areas, paths off the beaten track, and small spaces that help keep the player engaged while they're traveling. I know none of this stuff is exclusive to traveling, but I think for the last 3, the fact that traveling can be relatively chill and slow paced helps to elevate them and allow for the player to actually focus on and enjoy them. It's like drawing on white paper. Yeah, white paper on its own can be pretty boring, but it allows you to see a drawing really clearly because it doesn't distract and it works as great contrast. An NPC you stumble upon on a seemingly desolate road is always going to be more memorable than the 5th NPC you came across in NPC Town. The 4 L's are good and all, but they don't work for every game. Regular gameplay is fun because there's some challenge, something to overcome, something to keep you engaged. So why not add that to travel? In a lot of games, travel is boring because it's a period of time in between the combat. So why not just add combat while you're traveling? A game that does this great is the legendary Best of the Series, arguably in the top 10 best of games of all time, Dark Souls 3. Dark Souls 3 never feels good, even when traveling from boss to boss, because they follow everything listed in the previous section of the video and also implement combat throughout. I feel as though I wouldn't be representing this idea well though if I didn't mention the next game. One of the most bloodthirsty and savage games known to man. A game with violence, slavery, and child soldiers. A game feared for its satanic links, and a game run by a company so twisted and evil that few dare to speak their name out loud lest they be struck by the company's wrath. When walking around Pokemon games, you'll often hear this sound. Pokemon Wild Encounters are a truly goated way to handle travel for a couple of reasons. First is that it's fun to fight Pokemon. The game knows this and adds more times you'll have to fight Pokemon. Second is that it helps give the world life, literally. Wild Encounters don't feature the same 3 starter Pokemon over and over again. They help to introduce new Pokemon that are region specific. Third is that it gives players loot in terms of XP and new Pokemon. I know I brought up Pokemon for the example of combat while traveling, but let me go on a bit of a tangent here. Pokemon might actually be the go at making travel interesting. It's such good game design. It brings world building, action, and progression all into a spot most games ignore. I know the Pokemon designs are goated, but I do think it's things like this that have really cemented the Pokemon franchise as one of the greatest gaming franchises of all time. You don't need combat to make traversal tough though. If you think about it, all parkour/platforming games are just traveling, yet people love them. They do this through making the movement itself challenging. Walking across a straight platform is boring. Walking and having to make a jump is a little engaging. Having to make 3 really hard jumps in quick succession will have you locked in. Now imagine if you had to do this. At the end of the day, a player just wants a little brain stimulation. You don't have to have extreme gaming levels of difficulty to bring your player down to Flavor Town. Wildlands is one of my favorite games, and while it has a lot of faults, I think one of the things they do really well is travel. Kind of. Wildlands is an open world game set in Bolivia. You can travel in a variety of ways, but what makes it really stand out are the vehicles. Vehicles are a great way to make travel more interesting because they differ from regular walking. In a car, you have to deal with acceleration, deceleration, driving on the road, and off-roading. On top of that, you're moving 10 times faster than normal. These things change up the experience of traveling and introduce some difficulty. One vehicle is good and all, but Wildlands has around 100 different vehicles. This includes dirt bikes, boats, cars, trucks, tanks, and planes. Different vehicles for different terrain you can swap between can be a huge help to spice up travel. So far I've talked about gameplay changes to have travel hit a little different, but you can also raise up travel through visuals. We like looking at good looking things, so by adding in some breathtaking scenes, you can elevate mundane gameplay. A game that does the visual side of travel really well is Dave the Diver. Dave the Diver's gameplay is great, don't get me wrong, but just existing in the ocean or on the boat or in your restaurant is in and of itself nice. Catching and cutting up some calamari is crazy cool, but combining it with a calming boat background or the vibrant ocean elevates it to that next level. Here is Dave the Diver gameplay. Now look at it. The difference good visuals make to otherwise mundane activities is crazy. The difference between traveling in a dull environment and traveling with a true atmosphere is the difference between a good game and a great game. If I'm gonna make a video on travel in video games, I have to mention fast travel. Fast travel is the name of a game mechanic where the player is teleported to their desired destination instead of manually traveling there. Almost every game with a large map will have some form of fast travel, and it's not hard to see why. If travel was boring, why not just remove it? As a travel file myself, I know I'm pretty biased, but hear me out. I know fast travel is super convenient. I know it's easy for the game devs, but let me present an argument for not doing fast travel, or at least keeping it to a minimum. Fast travel isn't actually instantly teleporting. Well, at least for like 99% of instances. What fast travel is a loading screen instead of traveling. While this loading screen is almost always shorter than manually traveling, it's still just a loading screen. I don't play games to stare at a screenshot and read some handy tips. Instead of just putting fast travel everywhere, putting time and effort into making good travel, I think is always going to feel better. Try playing Elden Ring with no horse and limited fast travel. The amount of new content you find just by playing at a slower pace is crazy. Fast travel isn't bad, but it changes the game's pace. Instead of a slow march, it becomes very action loading. Action loading. I don't think that's a bad thing, but I prefer a game that can pull off a slower paced atmosphere. The most common way you'll see fast travel used is the travel to unlock method. Instead of having all fast travel points available off rip, the game will require you to head to the fast travel point, which forces you to experience the journey and then you get the convenience. I think this is a really nice balance, and it gives you a good reward for making it to the end of the journey. But imagine instead of fast travel, you unlock a goated form of movement which makes the journey back not only quicker, but gives it a fresh coat of paint. The destination is great, but if the journey is as well, then that's even better. Travel can be lifted up to be the highlight of a game. The fact that an entire game series where you just drive a truck is a big success is all the evidence you need that travel can be the best part of the game. Adding difficulty, aesthetics, and things to find and all the stuff I failed to mention help make travel and video games fun.